What's up, gamers? On today's episode of the Freeroll, we're breaking down my very first Parallel Alpha deck. The very first decision that you need to make when you're building a parallel deck is which parallel itself you're going to join. There are 5 primary parallels, and those are Earthen, Cathari, Augencore, Markolian, and Shroud. Then there is a 6th parallel called Universal, and those don't have their own Paragon, but can be added to any other parallel deck. So the deck is going to be made up of 40 cards. Those 40 cards are going to exclusively be from the parallel that you've chosen, plus however many Universal cards you need to fill it out. Next is one of the very unique features to Parallel TCG, and that is selecting your Paragon. Each of the 5 parallels has 3 paragons that you can choose from, and these are essentially champions within the parallel. They're very important because they have a passive ability that is going to be in play the entire game. So from turn 1 until the game is finished, the passive ability that you select with your Paragon is going to be in play and impacting gameplay for both you and your opponent. They also have really powerful active abilities that are only in play when the Paragon itself has been played on the field. So this is the first strategic choice that you need to make when building a deck. So let's dive into the parallel and Paragon that I have chosen for this deck. I am primarily a Shroud player, which is based entirely on the fact that I love purple, and the Shroud art is incredible and very purple. But I'm really glad that I chose Shroud early on because Shroud also has my most favorite Paragon in the entire game. Her name is Niamh, Wielder of Faith. And when we read her abilities, she paints a really clear picture for what this deck needs to look like and what our win condition actually is. Let's take a look. Niamh, Wielder of Faith, passive. You may not include cards in your deck with an energy cost above 5. Now, you might be scratching your head here because that actually sounds like a penalty, and it is a penalty. The reason why that is in place is because of how insanely overpowered her active ability is. It's also really not a problem because the way that we want to design this deck is not going to include any high energy cards anyways, but you do have to keep that in mind when you're building your deck. Her active ability is Muster. For each effect, relic, or upgrade you have played this game, play a random unit from any parallel with the same cost. Let that sink in for a second, because essentially what's going to happen is on turn 10, you're going to play Niamh, Wielder of Faith, and the game is going to be over because you are going to absolutely overwhelm your opponent with too many units and a massive army on the field that they're totally unable to stop. In addition, Niamh is also a really threatening attacker in herself. Let's take a look at the deck breakdown and keep in mind that we are trying to maximize our win condition, which is Niamh's active ability, and that requires playing as many upgrades, relics, and effects as possible. However, when you take a look at the Shroud cards, you're going to notice it doesn't have a whole lot to offer in terms of strong relics or upgrades, but it is loaded with really powerful effects. So this deck is really focused on using as many of those effects as possible, and the breakdown is as such. We have 21 units, 18 effects, and just 1 universal relic that I'll show you in a little bit. We've got a spread of energy cost as well. There are 9 1 energy cost cards, 14 2 energy cost cards, 10 3 energy cost cards, and 7 4 energy cost cards. Remember, we're forced to use only 5 energy and below, but we didn't even need a 5 energy cost card in the deck at all because of how strong the smaller cost cards happen to be, and in my opinion that is what you want. Later turns you're simply going to be playing multiple cards per turn in order to get as many of those effects in play as possible. Alright, so we're going to take a quick look at 4 of the really key early game cards that this deck needs and relies on. The first one is the Engine Whisperer. And this is ideally the card that you have in your opening hand and you play turn 1. The reason for that is it's a 1-cost 1/1 unit, but it's got a really important ability for our deck. Anytime it's in play, effects that you play cost 1 energy less. Remember, we have 18 effects in this deck, and we want to play as many of them as possible. So this card saves us a ton of energy. It also is going to make your 1 energy effects free to play, and your 2 energy effects only 1 energy to play. That is a big chunk of the effects in our deck. So those are going to get really, really easy to play, and means that you want to have a lot of cards in your hand, if at all possible, because very soon you're going to have lots of energy, and as long as the Engine Whisperer stays in play, your cards are going to be very low cost to get out onto the field. Then we have a cool unit called the Singularity Steward. It's a 2 energy 2/2 unit, and its ability is that anytime a unit is banished, it gets +1/+1. Now, we're going to be banishing units all the time with this deck, so ideally you get 1 or 2 of these in play by mid-game, and just allow them to stack up some bonuses by late game. You likely will have 4/4, 5/5, maybe even a 6/6 Singularity Steward that you only spent a couple of energy on, and is now a big problem for your opponents. Then there's a couple of 2 energy effects that I think are really, really useful here as well. The first one's one of my favorite Shroud cards. It's called the Flat Circle. Very cool art. The Perfect Loop is one of the best ones in the whole set, and it's a super useful card. For 2 energy, or only 1 if the Engine Whisperer is on the field, you get to return a card from the field to its owner's hand. Any card. So this is great because it can let you get rid of a relic. Those are a bit harder to remove traditionally. You can use this to get rid of high energy cost cards. If you have any card that's gotten buffed or upgraded a bunch of times, then you can use it to bounce that back to the owner's hand. I think Core decks are going to really hate this one. And then late game, when your opponent is playing 6, 7, 8, 9 energy units, you can respond by just bouncing it right back and forcing them to spend that energy again the next turn. That's going to be hilarious to force upon your opponents. And then finally, a really useful effect is Ashes to Ashes. For 2 energy, you get to play this card. It's going to banish a random card from your hand, but that's not going to be a big deal. And then it allows you to draw 2 additional cards. So early game, you're going to play these to help find more Engine Whisperers and Singularity Stewards, plus just to play an effect and start building up for our win condition. Late game, or if you have a really good early draw, they're great cards to just bank and turn into energy. All right, let's take a look at our higher energy cost cards. And in this deck, that means 3 and 4 energy cards, but these are still very key to your strategy. And the first one is a card I really enjoy called Nullifier Acolyte. It's a 3 energy cost card. It's a 1/4 unit, and its ability is that effects that target you or your units cost 2 additional energy. When you combine this with the Engine Whisperer, you are now getting a discount on all the effects you play, and your opponent is paying a major premium for any effects that target us. Now, that penalty doesn't apply to anything that targets their own cards, but for the most part, they're going to be trying to target our cards. And this is really, really helpful for protecting your Engine Whisperer. And when you have that combo in place, now you are playing discounted effects, and your opponent is primarily playing premium cost effects, which is a really nice combination for controlling the game and slowing things down. Next is probably the best effect in the entire Shroud deck. It is Erasure. This is a card I expect to see 3 of in just about every single Shroud deck because it's insanely useful. 3 energy cost, and you get to banish a unit to the Singularity. This this is going to really screw up your opponents, especially if you have figured out what they're trying to accomplish, because there's basically no way to get the cards back from the Singularity, and you're going to be able to remove 3 key cards at a pretty low cost. It's only 2 energy when the Engine Whisperer is on the field, and even at 3 energy, this is a tremendous card. Finally, a 4 energy cost unit, the Shepherd of the Fallen. This is a 1/4 unit, and it has another key ability that really helps you control the game. While that unit is on the field, any card that would be wasted is banished instead. So putting this on the field gives you a nice defender for 1, but also means that all of the cards that you're destroying are getting banished instead. This really screws up your opponent, but when you combine it with the Singularity Steward, it means that you're going to be getting a whole bunch of buffs from each one that is destroyed. Next, I want to highlight 2 universal cards that are insanely useful. In fact, I have put them in every single deck that I have built so far. I suspect that that's probably the case for most players, especially if they've sat down and actually read these cards. The first one is a very simple card, one of the coolest cards in the whole set. It's Annihilate. Annihilate is a 4 energy cost effect, and it's got a very simple but very powerful effect. It's destroy any unit or relic of your choice. So 4 energy, get rid of anything on the board. That is an effect, so it works with Niamh. It's also really strong effect, so you can use it to get rid of all sorts of different things. And when you combine it with the Engine Whisperer, it's only going to cost you 3 energy. Even at 4 energy, you can easily destroy something that is, say a 6, 7, 8 energy card and really screw with your opponent. Then the next one is the only legendary that we have included in this deck, and it's Ranksy, Master Imposter. In fact, I am of the opinion that Ranksy is the single most useful card in the entire set. It doesn't rely on anything else to build a combo. It just has a really strong ability. It costs 4 energy to play, and it's just a 1/1 unit, but it's got this very special muster ability that it becomes a copy of any non-legendary, non-Paragon unit of your choice. So you can copy something on your side of the board, something on your opponent's side of the board, probably more likely. And that is really flexible. But that's not the annoying part. The really annoying part about Ranksy is that when that unit is destroyed, if it was a copy of another unit, which it always will be as long as it hasn't been destroyed once on this turn already, then it becomes a 1/1 unit called Ranksy Cover Blown, and it has the following ability. At the end of your turn, it becomes a copy of a non-legendary, non-Paragon unit of your choice again. So that means it needs to be destroyed twice on a single turn to actually remove it from play. And that wraps up my Shroud Niamh deck. The overall strategy, as a reminder, is simply to slow down and frustrate your opponent while playing as many effects as possible throughout the first 9 turns of the game, to grow your energy bank to 10 as soon as you can, and then play Niamh, Wielder of Faith, to bring in all of the RNG fun and really turn the tables on your opponent. I expect that this is going to be a really fun deck to play, that it's going to have a lot of skill that you can apply, and that experience with a deck like this is going to make you better and better. I don't know if it's going to be meta in terms of being able to compete for top ranks, but I know for sure my friends are going to hate it when I play this deck against them, because it's really slowing things down and mucking up their plans. I hope you found this deck building exercise a lot of fun. The full list is right here. I've also copied it below for you so that you can build this deck for yourself no problem at all. And I am going to be continuing to put out videos about deck building. That's probably my favorite part about any TCG, and there are a whole bunch of really cool decks that I've already taken a look at, and we're going to continue to share more. So make sure you hit that subscribe button below so that you don't miss any of the future parallel content from the Freeroll.